Welcome to Woven in the Body, a podcast dedicated to unlocking the stories held within our bodies and awakening a new paradigm of consciousness. To explore the full range of our offerings, including classes, retreats, and events, visit us at www.thefloweroflifefoundation.com. Don't miss out on our upcoming events and bonus content. Sign up for our newsletter on our website. This is great. This is Jess and Bruce Ridge. And I'm so glad that you came to share your story and your journey. And your daughter, Anthem, who now goes by Beniyanna. You lovely family are perched up in northern Massachusetts, kind of off the radar, far from Boston, which was an intentional move. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about why you are where you are and what you guys do now.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I feel like the move was kind of for all three of us. Like we were in the middle of the city, and like as wonderful as that can be, it's also like the sort of energy of having a person above you, a person below you, the city all around you, the helicopters, the trains, sirens, like
The garbage trucks
right.
that
And
Beniyanna
then
loves.
combine that with like the sort of life retraction of a birth when you don't see all the same people you used to see, and then the life retraction of COVID 3 months after the birth. We were like in a really claustrophobic, intense place. And
That's right, because she was born in January of 2020.
Yeah.
And then Boston shut down like right after St. Patrick's Day. I remember because I was in Massachusetts.
Yeah. He was like, that's memory.
The super spreader like conference that happened in Boston. And then
Right.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
Bruce was not working by our family choice because he's a teacher. And so he made a choice for him not to go long before COVID, made a choice that he didn't go back to school that school year. And
to support your baby.
yeah, to support me, like, because we wanted him to be on for 3 months, and it was like, why go back to work for 2 more months? Like, let's just take the time. And so I was only income, and I was set to go back to work, which my job was remote anyway. But the week after, social isolation went into effect, and I remember I'm just having this memory of we were up at my parents' house visiting them and like watching the news and like this thing that was coming and making a choice. Do we stay with my parents
in rural
Maine and face this thing? I didn't have any of my work stuff, or like go back to the city to our home and to where I typically work. And we made a choice to go back, and like we were driving through a 93 into the city in the like at rush hour, and there was not another car on the highway. It was and anyone who knows 93 going into the city, it's pretty much has traffic any time of day. Yeah, so that's just a little context. And then so a year ago, so when she was 2.5, we moved out to Western Mass. My nervous system was completely dysregulated, though I don't know if I knew that terminology really at that point.
Yeah.
Our kids, I say mine because she was so attuned to me, like she was not doing well nervous system wise.
She was kind of in this place where she was like being classified as like, and from the medical experience we've had, as like failure to thrive. Like she wasn't growing, she wasn't seeming like she was eating a lot. Like we were just like all this stuff, like they wanted to do biopsies throughout her gut to see what was going on, and every test was like, well, everything looks normal, but and we're just like something.
Yeah, and we were like, she is thriving. Yeah. Like I was very concerned about her weight. She wasn't growing. Like that was a fact. She was not growing at all. But in every other way, she was thriving. And just to your point about there's something you said in the intro, Christiana, that made me think, oh, you said it about someone living above and below. So children's, well, I won't say that, too late. Edit that part out. In particular hospital in Boston was very concerned about her well-being, wanted to do some very invasive procedures, which was sort of standard protocol, a colonoscopy and an endoscopy to find the thing that was causing the thing. And through a bit of work on my own and our own, we're like, that's not what she needs. And so
Yeah.
we moved out to Western Mass. That wasn't the only reason. And I remember being on the porch, so we're on the in the woods, kind of basically on a hillside, and sitting on the porch on our second day and being like, I can't hear any other human. I can't feel any other human. And that feels so good. It was just like a, thank goodness. I feel like you made me think of that. It feels relevant to the work that we've done together.
Well, and I've been to where you are now, and it's in the snow and in the the normal weather, because I used to travel up the Mohawk Trail all the time. I went to cranial sacral school with Dr. Kate Klimmer, and she had just started her school out in it's not Shelbourne, it's past that. I can't think, that little town that has a school in it right by the base of the ski resort.
We don't know yet.
I don't, but it's out there. It's God's country. That's what they call it. It's so funny. And well, so you're a teacher, Bruce.
Yeah.
And Jess, you still work in and around the city, and you're in policy and advocacy, yeah?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know a lot about rights.
Yeah.
Human rights, and you're always about, you know a lot about equality. You're always out there fighting for people to have a voice. So, I mean, that's what I love about your story, because you found me, and maybe you can tell everybody on the call, because we haven't even said what happened. Like, what happened what happened at your birth, and how you found me. But I do remember when you found me, it was this failure to thrive. And you're like, I just want to try this. I was told, and I found you, I want to try this before we go that route. And she had already even had like some finger infection too, and been in and out of the hospital. And I mean, you guys, by the time she was 2.5, I think, when you and I first started seeing each other. She's 4 now. And yeah, this was kind of like a last ditch effort, or the beginning of like this new world effort. I don't know what you want to call it, but yeah. So what brought you to me? And then I think we can say, like, I'm like, oh, let's talk about your birth.
Yeah. I'll do the birth in a nutshell. We were planning to birth at home. We started at home. We were there for 12 some odd hours and transferred to the hospital, labored for many, many, many more hours, a total of 33 hours, and then had a non-emergency C-section. And the day that we left the hospital, which was like the standard 4 days after C-section, at least in Massachusetts, I left in excruciating migraine, debilitating pain. We went straight to our chiropractor's office. She'd actually come the day after we gave birth to give all 3 of us adjustments, which helped Anthem, was her name at the time, latch. And so we left the hospital and went straight to the chiropractic. It didn't really touch the headache. And that was sort of one of my situations for 2.5 years, and a little bit past when I was working with you, just pretty regular debilitating pain, largely in my head and neck. As time progressed, especially having to go back to work when my body was not ready, and also emotionally I was not ready. I was just like barely feeling human by the time that was happening.
You can take a pause.
Yeah, and my work, I raise money to make sure folks who don't have money in this country get it in ways that are honor their dignity and their choice. And so when I went back to work and COVID had hit, millions and millions of dollars were pouring in to go to people who needed it most. And so I felt like I had to serve. And part of me certainly wanted to. And so I was working very hard. Our kiddo was amazing and didn't want to sleep. Or maybe she did want to sleep and other things were going on, but like was not a sleeper. And so I didn't sleep probably for 2 years straight. I was nursing, and I was working so hard and pretty high intensity work. But also just wanting to be with her. She was wanting and needing to be with me. And so I was just in pain all the time. And over time, I started to notice this pattern of what I now think of as like really extreme nervous system dysregulation, where my body is in like fight, flight, freeze, like all at the same time. And all of these symptoms are happening at once, and just really horrible, just feeling horrible, like really, really horrible depression, fear, anxiety, all of the things. And we were just by ourselves because it was COVID, and I got cut off from the lactation groups and any sort of support that in the first 3 months were helpful to me. And then she was also not growing. And so I was also really worried about her, but I wasn't like going to the doctor was like never, even though my doctor was really wonderful and gave us a lot of good care, just like never felt like anyone was seeing me and like what was going on with me. And I felt like it was all on her and her weight. And like, I was like, that's not the problem. It's not the problem. But I like couldn't ever say it. And so I was in chiropractic for I was going chiropractor all the time. Because like one thing, like something make this pain go away. And maybe a few months before I connected with you, Christiana, I was like, somehow heard about, like, was starting to explore nervous system stuff. Oh, from another energy worker I'd worked with a couple of years prior, had connected me with someone, not directly, but who does a lot of online education about nervous system. Anyway, did somatic work, and it started to be like, oh, it's like there's something there with somatic work that could be really helpful. And so I went back to her, and she was just starting her training in pre and perinatal psychology. And she's like, I think this is what you need. Let me email my people and see if they know someone. And her people didn't know you, but had heard of you and emailed me probably in like April. And it was like a thing I wasn't ready for. And then we got to Western Mass, and I was like, I need to find this one, like dig through my emails. And I had taken a leave of absence from work because I was basically having a mental breakdown. And I remember it was my last Friday before I was going to go back to work, and I was at the Mass MoCA Modern Art Museum here in a corner, and he would call me on her 20-minute call. And I don't even remember that the primary thing I said was about her failure to thrive, because so much of what we did was about the birth. But you're reminding me that I was like, they want to do all these procedures. We had the appointment on the books, but I knew I didn't want to do it. I think you were there at that point, that you didn't want to do it either. But it's also like scary to say no when doctors are saying you got to do something.
Yeah.
It is scary. Yeah. Wow. Well, and just a little bit about how I work. I always ask a parent, what is it? What's your intention, and what's your, main concern? And at that point you had shared, that she was having this failure to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, tell me about your birth. And you're like, my birth. And I'm like, yeah. Like, tell me about your birth. And then that's when we started to really focus on you. And I said, look, we need to have some sessions, just you and I, before we even bring in, your daughter. And I know this is very backwards in a lot of modalities and how they approach care with a child. And that's one of the principles, is that the field, the energetic space that a child is growing in is its caretaker's field primarily. And their support, right? Their layers of support. Mm-hmm. So we really have to look at, if we want to do kind of like a top down approach and a bottom up approach at the same time, it's to really put out the alarm systems that are going on with the parents. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times we can even see just from the baby or the child's behavior, if the parent can't see it, the behavior of the child doesn't have the ego. So we can use cues from the child's behavior in order to kind of see into the past of the caretaker. So it's a little like a sleuth, you're trying to hear like, what's that thing? And sure enough, you gave me that tidbit. And what did you remember what we do when we got together? Like, do you kind of remember even? It's been so long ago.
I remember, I'm forgetting the name of it, but like the birth stories where I just like literally like wrote down little things that I wanted to share with her about her pregnancy and birth journey. And I remember just the process of me doing that, how therapeutic it was, and noticing the places where like, oh, there's a lot of trapped emotions there. And then even just, working through it with you and then telling her the story from more of a place of honesty but also, what's the word I was going to use? Yeah, just like the whole picture and not just being honed in on like what was really hard, but like the whole picture and what we were trying to do, and remembering the intention that we had put into our birth. And just sharing that, and like with each sharing how it felt less painful.
Yeah, because I mean, so that is the first thing that we did was the belly messages.
Belly messages, that's it.
Yeah, and I learned that from the former director of education at APA, and I had, gone through her training, and she had trained with Myrna Martin and, Ray Castellino and John Chitty and a bunch of other big pioneers in birth psychology. And naming just pieces of your story and actually seeing the child as conscious. Mm-hmm. Like understanding that they had an experience too, and wondering, like, I'm curious, like, I felt this at this time. I wonder what you felt if I was feeling this way, if I was scared or if I was really happy, or, you told me how you even went into labor. What a cool story that was. And I remember, even telling that story to her. It was just like, oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. You were creating a narrative. Mm-hmm. So even though these big things kind of went wrong or happened that were not what you had planned, and they definitely were scary, and they definitely caused, even, like physical harm. Mm-hmm. You were able to name that and name the emotion that you had, and also even say like how it wasn't her fault. And that first, like, we had a lot of you. Bruce, you want to chime in? You weren't really involved. It was just me and Jess at this time.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
She was doing this.
I knew she was doing it. Yeah. And I think a lot of you mentioned, like, you had this sort of nervous system dysregulation. Beniyanna was like not really growing. I think I was like emotionally just like chunk. Like I was just not there. Um, and I think watching you do a lot of that was like, oh, I don't have to like, this experience can be something other than something I lock in a space and never look at again.
Mm.
Right? Like I think for me it was just like exhausting straight into I have to make sure everything's okay for like the next few years. And that was all I could do.
Mm.
That I perceived that that was all I could do. Like there weren't any other options or any other stories for me. Like that's what my role was. To just like plug away at dinner, at laundry, at whatever it was.
Chasing her around to try to get her to eat.
Right. Yeah.
Take a bottle.
Yeah. And so I think like seeing you do that was like the first I realized, or like, oh, actually, like I don't have to be in that mode.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can engage with that birth as like brutal as it was for me in its own way. Like it doesn't have to just be that. Right.
I actually read the belly messages to him first.
Yeah.
Okay.
In fire, or maybe Benny.
They're beautiful.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think she might have fallen asleep nursing by the fire, and I was saying them to her, and he was there, and so yeah.
Well, and it's after a few months, because so we did that, and we did just some grounding, stabilization, craniosacral therapy, and we were on Zoom.
Yeah,
I was in Virginia at this point.
Yeah.
But it was, I mean, we even had you lie on the floor, like wherever you were in your house, we managed to, energetically, they call it distance therapy, but it's craniosacral therapy nonetheless. I'm tracking your nervous system. I'm tracking
very powerful sessions.
Yes, and you would have less pain.
Mm-hmm.
Your neck pain, this whole pattern that you had going on in your neck. But I remember I was like, okay, we really need to do a birth process of your story. And we called in the midwife.
Called in the midwife. So we did 2 sessions.
Yeah. And they were like an hour and a half each, 2 hours. And Lois, who lived up in Maine, I love Lois. She was a retired midwife, but incredibly experienced. Mm-hmm. And she listened to your story with me. And the two of us in tandem, because of her experience in hospital settings and knowing just knowing all the things that can happen, and like knowing what, women bring in and their past stories, like she was able to verify if that was like a thing that should have been done, or if it may have been done kind of carelessly, because you interact with so many people in this incredibly emotional, vulnerable, intimate space. And
what I remember about those sessions, well, there's, a lot of things, but I one of the things that I had felt is that because of COVID, like I had this whole sister circle that I had been in ritual with for feeding the pregnancy, and then during step away if you have to anyone. Then had a cough situation for a while. It had a lot of women who were really circling the whole pregnancy process, the birth, and then it just got all cut off because of COVID. And so I'd never like told anyone about my birth. And so I had all this support building up to it, and then nothing once it happened, or it felt like nothing. And so just being able to tell my story and have it be held and go really slowly, and also I had just blocked off a lot of what had happened at the hospital, and like an awareness, like I knew the places that were painful to think about, that like I needed to know, but like hadn't been ready to know. Particularly as I got towards the end, and like why all these things were tried, and like when I took the epidural and like that stuff, and I remember Lois, because Lois also like read all the paperwork. Like I had spent one of the therapies in preparation for this was me like going through all the like finally looking at it, 2.5 years later, looking at all the hospital records and sending them, being like, I don't even understand, like sending it to Lois. And then in the sessions with both of you, I remember her finally telling me what position she was in, because I was like, why was I in so much pain? Like I didn't know why I had been in so much pain on contractions, and I didn't know why she got stuck. And Lois really put a lot of clarity to that, and a lot of affirmation to, like, I had felt like with the exception of 2 interactions in the hospital, like we were really, really held, which is what I was afraid wouldn't happen and why I really wanted to birth at home. But they really held us until after the C-section. But yeah, she just explained a lot of things that, at least for someone like me and the way my mind worked, like I needed to have those dots connected. And it was very traumatic for me not to have known like what happened to her. Because it was all supposed to be me or him catching her. No one else was going to lay hands on her. And then lots of people's hands were laid on her, and I didn't know what happened. I knew things were happened, and I knew it was pretty traumatic when she finally got out, but I like couldn't look at it. And so the sessions with you helped me look at it in a really safe way, and a way that held my body and what my body was going through, remembering it.
Yeah, and it brings up a really good point. You were held by that hospital staff, and yet you had this tremendous fallout that nobody even prepped you for.
No. And I
Nobody
think
said, hey,
because I was held so well, I just doubted. I was like, what is wrong with me? Like,
right.
there's far more traumatic births than what I had. What is wrong with me? Like, I failed in some way, and something is wrong with me. It shouldn't be this. It shouldn't be this way.
Yeah, and that actually gives me chills for all the voices of women that have that thought go through their head, that they've failed somehow as a mother. And it's just there's so much science and data now. I remember taking Birth in Pieces from Dr. Kathleen Kendall Tackett, and she writes about birth interventions as being risk factors for PTSD. Just like you'd been to a war and back. And, C-sections are really common. In fact, it's encouraged in a lot of societies versus a vaginal birth. And yet nobody is prepped for the long-term or even the short-term psychological effects. And when I mean psychological, I really mean emotional, physical, mental, spiritual, like the whole thing. Like, it's like, oh, C-section, wham, bam, and you're discharged from the hospital. And there's like nobody to help you through the rehabilitation of that process. And I feel like every woman deserves that support. And just that knowing, like, hey, if you have a C-section, it might be really hard to breastfeed your baby. Or your baby may seem distant or not even like you. Like, these are things that are just common with just a C-section, and we haven't even talked about Pitocin or epidural or cord cutting or forceps or any other kind of mechanical intervention at birth. So it's just, I think that there's so much that our healthcare system needs to catch up on, because this care that we have is really substandard care. And that's a tragedy. And
and I'm thinking about also the kid. Like, for us, we were just like, as part of the home birth and then going into the hospital, like, how do we like honor, like, it was really, really important to us, and me in particular, that like her coming into the world was her first act of like agency in like human form. And C-section interrupts that. Is like, and it saved our lives, but it took me 2 years before I made the connection. Oh, like her and I would probably both be dead were it not for C-section. So thank goodness we have that. And there's still so much more that could have held us better. And we could have held her better had we known more too, not in a shame on us way, but just like there's ways we would have since working with you, even more ways we would have communicated with her during that process. Had we known. Had our provider.
That's my dream. And I know a lot of people who are part of APA and other organizations around the world that are advocating that babies and mothers, they have so many emotional needs that are being unmet currently with our standards of care. And if we had professionals who were trained and just the education piece of just the awareness of what types of emotional needs babies and mothers have, how their bodies work naturally, like how it's designed to work, and how interventions are actually an interruption of that physiology. And if we understand that there's an interruption, then we can go in with the correct amount of repair immediately, like having craniosacral therapy right there, like after birth, like having somebody to help the mother. And in indigenous societies, there is that kind of care. There's a village, that women come and they mother the mother who's gone through this huge transformative process. And she's just like wide open, just trying to get down where her brain just grew like leaps and bounds, whether there's trauma or not. Like her whole brain is rewired and she's got all these emotions and all these hormones that are leaving her body. And then she's got this like being that's needs 24-hour care. So it's like, I'm just like in shock. So that's why that 40 days is so important, to have these layers of support so the mom can just get her bearings and feel all of those tender thoughts and, just be in a safe haven. Well, and this kind of brings me up to my next point. You got some water. But I want to say you did create that safe haven.
We did.
And, we ended up, after we did your birth story processing, we started doing play therapy online, like in your house with her. And I'm just curious, like what we did the play therapy starting a few sessions before Bruce, you came in and did a couple sessions. Because at that point, Jess was like, gosh, Bruce, I really think that I've had so much benefit. Like, I think you should do this.
Consistent pattern.
The husband's always like, oh God.
Yeah.
Who's this woo person that you're gonna like send me to, and I gotta talk about my emotions? Like,
yeah, I definitely squirmed with the play therapy at the get, but it was
we know why though now.
totally. I was like, like I was like, yeah, I was in robot mode for a while. It's like it was a tricky pattern to get out of. But I remember those play sessions were kind of a trip. Like
Yeah.
she would like she was so engaged in it, and like some of the stuff she like.
And just a reminder, in case people didn't hear, we were on Zoom.
Yeah, we were on Zoom.
Bruce and Beniyanna were in our house with a computer in her play area, and Christiana was in Virginia on her computer.
And so
we had nothing but her toys.
Nothing but her toys.
Yeah, and it was mostly you were just like prompting with like questions. You're like asking her questions mostly, as she kind of like set up whatever scene she was setting up. And usually like first 10 minutes seemed like she kind of like eased into something, and then sometimes it would get really intense for a few minutes, and then like she would get in some like serious resistance about something. And then following that, she'd often like have this huge, like
Boring.
visible energy movement and like just like burst out as like this totally different person. Um,
I
in
get
like
chill bumps thinking about it.
it's like what, it's like an hour,
An
and a half.
hour. Most
Like,
of them are an hour.
yeah.
Even 45
You,
minutes
you would
sometimes.
all feel it. Like there's sometimes like the nausea or the pain
Oh my
that would
God.
come into the
Yeah.
space, or this like distorted energy that would like literally floor me and Bruce. And she'd be like furiously making blocks. Like
Right.
serious.
As we like curl up on the floor.
We're like, ugh.
I know we laugh now, but it was
Mhm.
it's really, I remember the first kind of journey that we had, she built the vehicle
Yeah.
that took her to the hospital.
Yeah.
Wow. Like this kid was 2.5. She wasn't even 3 yet.
No, I don't think so.
And she built these like little Legos, and she had this little car, and I would ask her questions, and sometimes you guys would translate, what she was saying, because it might be hard to hear or whatever. And I would point out things to you. And then I would ask, like, what are you noticing in your body right now?
Mhm.
Always bringing it back to your body. And the story would just show up. Same story that's like running underneath in the background, like kind of haunting the space, but not. And that was the idea. Like we're just bringing it into the space, like shining a flashlight on it and holding it and letting her know, like, hey, we feel this, and validating, even if she wasn't, like, oh yeah, like talking to us verbally and saying, I agree, but her body would show us. And that was all I was doing, was going off her body cues, like watching how she was, and of course tracking what was happening in my body and in that energetic space. Like we could feel immense heat and certainly the nauseousness.
Nausea.
Mm.
Yeah. And sometimes, Bruce, so this was where it got really big, because you would really, sometimes in the very beginning, it would just like, I was like, I had a saying for this. It was like, oh, is dad out to sea? He's like, he's gone on out to sea.
Yeah. Yeah. There were like, I mean, I think that's what you're referring to. There's just like this, I think partly because of the nature of your connection with her, like often there would be this sort of like feeling of being on like out, like in a distant orbit,
Yes.
right?
And
Uh,
not part of the tribe.
yeah, yeah. And I think like, and I've heard this from other fathers I know. It's like it's not entirely uncommon, and in some ways, like there's something natural about the dynamic, and like really not knowing how to engage it, or like become a part of my own family, right? It like was a really it's like super painful. Um and I mean, yeah, to like look at it like now, like it still comes up every now and then. She's like, no, I need mom, which is like fine. Like sometimes kids need their moms. But like it's a very different relationship. And I think a large part of that is around just like in those more controlled spaces, being able, or I guess boundaried spaces, being able to like play with engagement with her, and like notice how I remove myself from that relationship. Um yeah, it was like a really powerful thing to see. Um and I think it's like it had a significant impact on my relationship with her and with you. Um in terms of just like, yeah, like rebuilding those bonds.
Rebuilding those bonds. Well, I remember when you showed up for your first session with me, and it was just you and I. And we did this, like in normal circumstances, therapists don't see husbands and wives if it's separate, if they've seen them together. But we weren't doing couples therapy. We were doing, again, building bonds. And what we were trying to do with you is uncover what was that piece, kind of what was that pattern for you checking out or feeling outside of the group or
Mm.
disconnected in a way where you would get kind of shut down.
Yeah. 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 Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, no, I just remember that we started talking about your birth. And then that's when things like really ramped up, especially in our therapy sessions with her, was when we did a session kind of unwinding about your birth.
Yeah. And it was interesting too, just like some of the lead up to that was around like asking my mom about that. And I learned that like when I was born, I was essentially like, I forget exactly the language around it, but like I was blue, was how my mom always described it. I was like born like blue, like I wasn't breathing. Um, and rather than like close contact with mother, like care in that way, I'm like removed from her. And she was, I think, like by herself for like minutes, as they like worked to get my airflow going, in the way that they did it, which I imagine is like, you know, some sort of tube ventilation thing. And just like that immediate separation, yeah, it still kind of like sits because I think that's something that I don't know quite how to articulate. I'm having a little trouble, but like, yeah, I was like pulled away the moment I was born. Yeah, yeah, like kind of flopping around. I wasn't um alive in any like, you know, visible sense. Like I was kind of vacant when I came out.
Vacant. And we even talked about that kind of some of your story growing up, where it would be, you know, you would tell me stories about you kind of coming into the family scene around the dinner table. And, you know, like how it was hard for you to kind of fit in or show up or even felt like you were seen.
Hmm. Yeah, there was and that's I think been can be a challenge for some younger children, like, you know, just like being on the younger end of my family, like the youngest of three. Um, like I was seen and also like really not. You know, like to make sure things worked, I like put my interests, urges, preferences of any kind back. Um, and so this sort of like putting myself to the side pattern, um, is like really old for me. It's been like in this life, like it's been a real ingrained pattern for sure. Um, and like saw it just so repeated in our life with a kid. Just like constantly like, I'm good. I don't need, no, I'm fine. I'll take care of it. Just like constantly setting my own needs aside. Um, and like as often as I practice that, like I'm also reinforcing this like I don't have needs or my needs don't matter or I don't need to be loved, I don't need to be cared for, I don't deserve this. Which feels like it was kind of at the root of the whole problem, is this belief that like this wasn't for me. For whatever reason.
And I remember we actually kind of had this breakthrough session. It was interesting. Sometimes we bring the prenatal journey into the story because the prenatal life mimics what happens in the birth stages. And just to be clear, like I learned a lot of this from Dr. William Emerson. And then through Kate White and through readings of the literature and journals, because I'm, you know, a big reader. But I remember us watching this egg and sperm journey video, and I was like, oh, by the way, I've got something really weird for you to do. But trust me, it's going to set the space. And we almost went through this like somatic, I don't want to, just a somatic journey during that session where we would name what you were feeling in your body. And you actually, it was like a chance for us to kind of navigate right along the edges of trauma and you to experience a different perspective. We call it reovers, but your implantation journey. And you had this euphoric, like even like spiritual you were like, wow, like feeling in your body. And it was just like magic. I guess we could just call it magic.
Yeah, I mean, it was basically like, it felt like a guided meditation. It was like basically, I was born in Oregon. Anyone who's been to the Pacific Northwest knows it's just lush and green and beautiful. And it was sort of this like, this is the place I was born, and I got myself there. Like I like saw this place, and it was sort of like from like 30,000 feet, and you kind of come down, 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 and just like, oh, like I picked this. And I didn't tell you this because it happened more recently, but I went to the West Coast again over the summer to visit my grandmother, and I started crying in the plane as we were going into land. I was just having the same experience of just like coming to this place that is really special to me, which is just so different from everything else I'd heard about my birth, about that process of coming into the world. It was like completely distinct from it, and yeah, and beautiful in a way that like being born not breathing, and like, it's not the same story at all. Yeah, and felt in some ways very empowering also.
Yeah, and this is often the case, like when we connect people to this embodiment journey, that they discover their choice, their agency, the spirituality, the sacredness, the power of nature, the awe, the wonder, all these things. And you're like, wow, like life is a gift. Life is truly this amazing, precious, yummy thing that we can live. And you're like, oh, there's like fireworks going off in my body right now, just thinking about it. But when we had that session, I don't know if you remember this, but we had a play session, and it was the three of you. And do you guys remember the TP kind of thing, or like the sheet over you?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that was after
Oh my
the
God.
miscarriage, I think.
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah. And just so everybody knows, you had a miscarriage about 9 months after we started this journey together.
And 3 years after her birth.
3 years after her birth.
The day.
Yep. And it was too much for us to talk about on this interview because it was so many dynamics that being resolved from epigenetics. I mean, this is where you really apply these theoretical principles that people write about, and you experience it, and it's just like, wow. But yeah, you did that, and we had this play session, and you were invited in underneath.
I like set up basically like a little fort for y'all, like the sheets and pillows and stuff. And yeah, and she like poked her heads out. She's like, "Daddy, come inside." So, okay. But when she said it, the first time, there was this part of me that was like, "There's no way she said that," and like asked her to clarify. It's like, you couldn't possibly want me with you, my daughter, and my partner. Like, there's no way. was just like somewhat appalling to notice that impulse in myself, and also yeah, really important for me to see how much of that is also me. Like,
Yes, like, and that was what was so interesting, that discovery was that, this goes back to that original statement that children are kind of, they're reflecting what's in their field. And I mean, I know this story because my husband and I had a C-section that was really traumatic, and there were more details with the discovery of our pregnancy and everything, but there was this, no, I don't want you in my space, Dad. Like an adamant, and it's like, if I was in the room, our son couldn't have him involved. In fact, there would even be kind of violence and outrage about it. And this journey that you had of kind of like integrating this experience of your birth, of your childhood, of your child's birth, it was like you were in your body and she could feel it. And she was like, come on in. I like this. Like, I like this feeling.
yeah.
And I remember just how overwhelming it was for all of us. We were just like, wow, this is, again, magic. Well, Bruce, I, between the two of you, I remember when we started talking about this was the failure to thrive. I remember how after the first few sessions, you took her to the doctor and she had gained weight.
Mm.
And we hadn't even worked with her.
Yeah.
So it was another big, powerful thing, validation that if parents can just take the time out to get some work on, for themselves, some support, some self-care, because, they're always saying on the airplane, put your mask on first before you go to put somebody else's mask on, right? It's the same principle. What do you want parents to know? Like, if you could give a voice, Jess, maybe to all those mothers out there that can't afford this care or even know about it, it's not something that is readily available or talked about.
Yeah, it's not readily available or talked about. It's not paid for or compensated in any of the typical ways we pay for healthcare. And it has been the primary thing that has supported me, supported us, supported her in healing from that journey. And so I guess the first thing that I would say is, and I'm still working on this, even with all the work we've done, is just like that you haven't failed and that there are resources, there are things that can help, and that our medical care system provides some really, really important life-saving services. And it's like just not, it's really incomplete, it's inadequate. And it's okay to fill in the gaps. And my dream is that we start to resource those gaps and start to make it acceptable that there isn't just only one right way to do this, that actually we need a more wholesome approach to how we do this, and how we support moms, and also that it's like not too late.
Right.
No, like it would have been amazing if I got to see you in person or virtually right after the birth. It would have changed a lot of things. It would have been great if I worked with you before the birth. And here we are. And it's made such a difference in all of our lives and will continue to do so. And so it's like whenever how do we make more people know that this is possible? How do we train more people? And how do we start training the other types of providers just with the knowledge? I just think of, the extreme full body terrors that I had after hemorrhaging. So I hemorrhaged after the C-section. And that was when the care got really sloppy, and not caring. And I lost a lot of blood and almost needed a blood transfusion. And then a day or whatever it was later, when my blood was coming in, at which point I hadn't slept for like 3 or 4 days, every time I closed my eyes, I would have full body, the most intense terror. Like I would leap. I couldn't leap because all my legs were swollen. I had a catheter, like I couldn't move, but I would just like jolt out of bed, or up, I should say. So definitely wasn't getting out of bed. I thought it was like, how am I ever going to walk again? And I felt like when I would ask the nurses or doctors, they would just look at me like I was crazy. Because they had no idea. But when I worked with you, it was like, of course you had that. And I even just recently, I worked with another practitioner locally, who has a lot of, is a doctor in Chinese medicine. And he's like, your soul is unhoused when you lose that much blood. Like if someone had said that to me then, like that in and of itself, and I forget the language you used when you told me, like had someone said that to me in that moment, it would have like calmed me down so much. But it was like, they don't know, but I know something serious is that's causing this. I sort of have gone off on a tangent here, but there's like so many things like that. Or like I remember being discharged and going home, and within a day the midwives came to the house, and my calves were 4 times the size they should be because of all the water fluid, which made it really uncomfortable, but was also like extreme body dysmorphia that was its own emotional fuckery, excuse my language. And she just got there and immediately was like, can I just please rub your legs? Like what if someone had just rubbed my legs?
Yeah, like a lymphatic massage. Like
lymphatic massage. Like it's so
this isn't new stuff here, people.
And so I just I don't know, like I want people to have access to this, and I want to help, and for people to, sometimes it's scary. I think also we have to find our own moment when we're actually ready to face the darkness. And like I got your email, I got your contact information or your website before I was ready to access it. And maybe had I had different care in the hospital, that would have been a different situation. But it's also, I think the more we can drop these seeds so that when someone is ready to access it, they can, because that was the case for me. And I think with what I've learned with a lot of this somatic work and trauma work is like, you can only face what you're ready to face, and you have to just take it one step at a time. Because it is a lot. There's a reason why we repress these feelings, because a lot of times they're terrifying. And if we're not held, and we have a history of not being held, even like from our childhoods, my childhood as well, like it makes it even that harder to face it. And so just I guess it's just like, when you're ready, there are people that can help you. And how do we create even more holding in the system?
That's beautiful, Jess, because everybody needs holding in this world that we live in. And we got a lot of ruptures to repair. So there's not one single person that is free from this, not one. And all of us have been born, into a system that doesn't really recognize the power of birth and how important it is for everything about the rest of your life. Because that's why we spent so much time together, because I can't throw the book at you in the beginning. I can't, because
I would have never come back.
You would have run for the hills.
Yeah.
You would have been like, oh God. And that's the beauty of our work, because every time we show up, there's like we're going deeper and deeper and deeper, because you've grown into this process of uncovering and going deep into family fields. Same with Bruce. And it's just, there's so much that we as humanity can do. And this is like that top down approach that I mentioned. Like, if all adults could have access to some sort of this modality of like psychosomatic therapies that are incorporated of, they incorporate the knowledge of how we come into form, that would be awesome. But at the same time, if we can start with the people who are birthing now, catch these babies at a higher vibrational state, at a higher level of consciousness, at this ability to embrace nurture on all levels of our emotional beings, then imagine the world. And I know Anna Verwal said this recently in a talk that I saw, and it is something along the lines of this, that if we could just have a generation of children held with these principles of birth psychology, that we would have a peaceful world. Something to think about.
Yeah, I remember thinking, I am someone who felt in a lot of ways very held during pregnancy. There's definitely things I would go back and improve within our families and in the medical care, but like by and large, I felt like very held, and the significance of it in different ways was held and whatnot. And I just not after birth. And I'm just like, there's a real gap.
Yeah.
Real gap there. And I think for a lot of people, and in some ways for us too, like the actual birth itself is also not held. And I feel like there are ways to, or I long for ways for us to create care where we can collectively share in the awe and this spiritual amazingness that someone coming earthside is, regardless of what anyone's spiritual beliefs is. Like, can we there's like a shared principle across religions, or maybe even for those who identify as atheists, that like there's something profound about birth and what would it be, and death, because they do go hand in hand, and how do we create. And so I think the somatics is a really powerful way to do that maybe we don't need to talk about sort of the religious or this or that. It's just like the embodiment of that.
The universal language of natural laws. Like, we know that the sun rises in the morning in the east and it sets in the west, and that we know, no matter where you are in the world, no matter what color you are, no matter what your religion is, there's no dogma to nature. And how we come into form is the same for every single human being. Yeah. And somatic therapies is that it speaks that language. Wow. Well, Bruce, do you want to tell something to fathers out there? Because I have dads that, when I see a dad show up with a mom, I'm just like so touched, because oftentimes, our dads aren't there. The women are out there trying to find all the answers. And I know this is a stereotype, so I don't want this to be what every story is, but I've had one father call me, one father on behalf of his wife, and everybody else has been mothers seeking care, and out of those, a handful of dads coming. What would you say as a dad and a man yourself? No pressure.
No, it's okay. Yeah, it's a funny thing. There's like this sort of like discourse. There's not a lot of discourse about it actually. The sort of, I guess, pattern or socializing that a lot of us get, right? Is that like if you're either often like uh cold asshole, or you need to like turn all your stuff down and just be a little smaller and be a little less present and like not take up so much space. It's like often kind of vacillates between those extremes, at least in the discourse. And I think I tended toward the latter. I like have a very strong pattern of making myself small. And I think a lot of guys who try to do good out here like tend to do the same thing. Um, and I think what I'd say is like there is, maybe I'll just say this to myself like 4 years ago, like you have a right to be taken care of. And like in your being taken care of, you are taking care of the people you love. Because it just feels like the system is mechanized, right? And the care is incidental. It is not part of the package. We were fortunate in that we had, a lot of nurses and doctors go in because they care about people. But like, there's nothing about that system that is caring. Like, not in our experience. The people, yes. The system, no. And that's, I think, a big part of the problem. Like, none of the systems around us are like inherently caring, except for the people that occupy those roles, sometimes. And like, if I had been told about postpartum depression before we left, oh my God. Like, if I had been told that there are like groups for new fathers, I don't even know if they exist. There are definitely none that we got in our little sheet from the hospital. Lactation groups, moms groups, like nothing for dads. It feels like a very sad state of affairs at the moment. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and I just like what I needed at the end of that was like I needed somebody to hold me. Like I was physically and emotionally exhausted, feeling really pretty alone. I just needed to be held, and like that was not available or offered by anyone. And it's sad. Like it's really sad. And I think that sort of like guys learn that lesson enough that they stop asking. And they learn it early most of the time. Yeah. Yeah. And so I think that's a little bit of a grim point to leave it on. But I think I tell myself, I think I tell guys like, yeah, you like it is your responsibility to seek care for yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's okay to ask questions.
Yeah.
And it's okay to, it's like that proverbial, like, men don't ask for directions, but you can. And it's good for everybody to take on responsibilities if the systems are broken, which we all pretty much acknowledge these days, like the systems are broken and we're like standing here kind of in disgust. Now's the time to don't just accept everything that's given to you or accept an answer, but to research it yourself. Find out why that answer has been given to you. Find out what is the history behind that. Like take responsibility for knowing. And then we can change. And I have to bring it up. I know we are leaving this, we mentioned a grim note, and I know we'll give a lot of hope. But you guys are like white.
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of therapy is also like so white.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about all the mothers out there that are from a different country or not white or indigenous or anything along the
Especially
spectrum.
their native language. Yeah.
Yes. And they're in these systems and things are done to them. And I know this, I run a nonprofit, and I do postpartum doula care for families who cannot afford doula care. And all of these things are their risk factors are even higher for postpartum or birth interventions or whatever. And they're living and they're just steeping in all sorts of chaos. And there's nobody catching them either. And it's even harder to get this type of care or even trust
Mm-hmm.
that disparity between cultures because of their past
Mm-hmm.
and because how they're treated by medical providers, or just even being like, just even going in with Medicaid. It's, I have women that I work with, and they it's like they're dirty or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they're an inconvenience because they don't have the means and they're on Medicare or Medicaid. And I deal with people who are white, on Medicare. And it's the same thing. It doesn't matter. And that's another universality about all of this, is that if you are a woman, a lot of times there's a lot of rights. And now, Bruce, you've even told us that even just our social conditioning about how men can be cared for. So
Yeah, a lot of our systems have specifically, because of racism, cut out, primarily driven from racist beliefs, but cut out men from the system. Like I think of what is known as our welfare system. We've systematically cut men out of the process in lots of ways. Yeah. Yeah, I think about that a lot. And since we're here, I'll do. And coming from Massachusetts, I'll shout out my friends at the company Doula Care and the birth center in Boston run by my friend Ashira, that are trying to do things sound very similar to what you're doing in Virginia. And so how do we also resource the folks that are trying to get care, what really should be basic care?
yeah, no, standards of care.
Standard, like yeah, part of what we do.
I wanted to put that out there because I think it's
I bet you
important. And I just want to bring us back to how much hope there is. And I love the word magic, because when I show up and I do this work, I left my corporate job, and I had great pay. I had benefits. I had all these like really great things. And I left all that behind because I gave birth.
Mhm.
Because I gave birth in a world that has got it all wrong. And I really wanted to help other families like come to know that there's hope and that there's healing, and that my family has been through it, and I have been through the trenches, and I have done this type of work and more. And I just want it to be available for everybody, because just seeing the two of you just transform, and Beniyanna
Doing great.
Oh my gosh. I just remember when you called me up and you're like, you're not going to believe how she is in preschool. Like, she's just like the leader of the pack.
Pretty much running the household at this point.
And she's so intuitive and just observant and into nature and feelings and emotions. She's just articulate. Like, her brain is exploded. And here we were dealing with this little girl who wasn't gaining weight and who had a lot of angst in her body and couldn't sleep and just a lot of turmoil, a lot of demons in her space.
Mm-hmm.
And now you just see her just floating around with the butterflies, flitting with the fairies. She's just like,
Totally.
and you to see the both of you, and you're about to embark on your own journey.
On a big pilgrimage. Yep. Yep. I have much less pain in my body, and when I have it, it's less severe, and often I can notice when it's coming up and take care of myself so it doesn't spiral out. And sometimes it's still there and there's another layer for me to look at, and
Yeah.
I have you and other
Mm.
practitioners.
It's the pilgrimage.
Yeah.
It's going to be awesome. Well, I think you two are some of the bravest souls that I've encountered, and it has been such an honor to work with you and everything that you do for the planet, because you're just amazing human beings. And so is your daughter. She's going to bring in a new type of world.
This has been a gift, even, I mean, it's just been a gift to work with you in general. And even this has been therapeutic. And so for us, and I hope that for some other families that listen in, it's also an uplift. But so thank you for the opportunity to share a story.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, guys. Bye for now. We'll sign off, okay?